You've been listening to Matters of the Mind, a podcast that focuses on matters that affect the mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. Come, join me on the couch as we discuss matters dealt with, matters dealing with, and the matters that we avoid.
Dr. Rick, I have literally been excited about this because when I heard, right? Because when I heard Matters of the Mind was coming back for a reboot, I'm like, whoo, great, because it feels like the world is just going cuckoo for Cocoa Puff. Like, I'm not sure what
you can say that, but I can't say that.
Well, I'm saying it because we are going cuckoo for. We have to laugh sometimes just to stop from crying, but we can't just laugh about it continually. We really have to talk about it.
We do.
And that's what we're doing. And so, when I heard about it, why now? Let's start there. Why was it now the perfect time for you to reboot?
So oftentimes you hear me say this, let's keep it real, right? So let's keep it real. We often say it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better. But what about when it doesn't get better? What about when you see it getting worse? And that's what I'm seeing right now. I'm seeing things get worse, not get better. And that's why, one of the main reasons why I said, okay, we got it. I was convicted and it just led to say, okay, we got to redo this.
Do it now. You got to do it now. Well, on that note, so if you had to give our society a mental health grade, now are you going to give us a C minus or are we on our way to summer school?
Okay, so because I don't do feel-good therapy, we definitely going to summer school. D minus, but if I curve it, it'll be a C.
Oh, okay.
So I can curve, but without a curve, we straight D minus.
Oh, wow. So we're not on the honor roll. We're not on the honor roll at all.
But we can make it up in summer school, though.
Oh, okay.
And still pass.
Right.
You know?
Well, I feel like with that in mind, I figure I'm not surprised that we're not on the honor roll anyway, but it feels like we're drinking from a water hose of just stressors.
Yes.
Political violence, political unrest, the financial stressors, the mommy stuff, the daddy stuff. It's just a lot. How is it really affecting us mentally?
Let me first say, I truly believe clinically that it's intentional. It is intentional. It's intentional what? To divide the family. It's so, from my perspective, I see that the family system, the family structure, which is the foundation, which is one of the most difficult aspects of how you keep it together, is under attack, if you really want to ask from a clinical perspective. And because that family system is under attack, it starts with the parents, and then after, if it doesn't get through with the parents, it goes to the kids, and the kids to get to the parents, and then of course society starts coming in. So it's just so many entities that is under attack against, from my perspective, the family unit that is causing a lot of the discourse.
And I like that you said the family unit because I want to talk about the generations, the different generations of handling the mental health crisis and the stressors that we have. Because for us, we're staring up at the ceiling at 3 a.m. in the morning trying to figure out, oh, well, Lord, how am I going to get through this? Meanwhile, we've got our kids who are also dealing with their own levels of stress and anxiety and depression. And for generations, how do we handle it as opposed to compared to the children?
If you want us to talk about generation, we often say it takes a village to raise a child, okay, or raise a family, so to speak. We don't have that village anymore. We don't. Let's keep it real, okay? You used to have the next door neighbor saying, hey, what's going on? You need to go home, or across the street or down the street, or different. You knew your neighbors down the block. Right now, we don't. We have situations where things are happening, like recent school shootings, and a neighbor like, I didn't know that's Billy next door, okay? And the reality is, how did they miss it? Well, we miss it because we're so preoccupied to some extent with self, and we don't necessarily take that village mentality. So from a generational perspective, we've kind of walked away from the family aspect of the community to more so me, myself, and I, and mine.
But the children handle it differently than the adults. How do they get through it?
Well, get through what? Because I'm not sure if they're getting through it. Because remember, anxiety amongst young people is on the rise. When we talk about suicide is on the rise. We've had at least 11 school shootings this year, at least 100 incidents, somewhere between 80 and 100 incidents that violence that involve guns. So on our school campuses, so they're not handling it. They're not handling it. And there is a remnant of young people who are handling it, yes. However, I would say the majority of them are struggling.
And on top of all of that, you've got the social media, right?
Yes.
So that adds to it, because that whole social media, it can be the bully and the bestie all in one time, right?
And I wouldn't even say that social media adds to it. I'd say social media is it. It's it. You know, is it the whole thing? No, because there's the parental aspect of it as well. However, when you've been, as a young person, when you understand that the part of the brain of young people is not truly developed, the prefrontal cortex, until the aspects of 20, 21, 22 years old, that's when the brain is usually developed. So we move from thinking to feeling, feeling to thinking. And the problem is a lot of young people are still in the feeling mode. They're not in the thinking things through mode. So because they're in that feeling mode, they're making decisions based on how they feel. Well, what's the difference? We as adults know that you can't, if you don't feel like paying that bill, you better get past it and pay it. You know, you don't feel
Choices
like,
and consequences.
there you go. You don't feel, I don't feel like going to work. You know, that feeling passes real fast when all of a sudden you get these letters in the mail, okay? So as an adult, we process things cognitively, dealing with what's called consequential thought. Young people don't necessarily focus on the consequence. They focus on how they're feeling in that moment. And because those decisions of in the moment is being made, they can't take it back. Taking that gun to school, in that moment when you're angry, you can't take it back now that you do that. Saying what you do in social media, sending that that button,
That post.
It's there, it's there.
It's like squeezing the toothpaste. I've had this analogy before. Squeezing that toothpaste out, you can't put the toothpaste back in there once it's out.
There's no suction.
Yeah, right. And so let's just transition a little bit about the family, because not just the children, but adults sometimes are also facing their crisis of identifying who they are,
Right.
who they are really,
Right.
and our children as well. So that transition, the identity crisis, the gender orientation, all of that plays a part. How do we handle that with that type of crisis and mentality?
You can't start over, but you can go back to the beginning. Let me say it again. You can't start over, but you can go back to the beginning. Meaning what? There are things that you can begin again in a relationship. You can't start over. In other words, you can't erase all the things that have happened to you in your past. However, you can begin again each day. That's why I believe God says it's the present. Okay? It is a present, another day to be able to have another opportunity. And sometimes what we do is we allow our present situation to be more determined by our past failures than our present situation being determined more so by what we're going to start doing.
But how does that relate to identifying who you are?
Okay.
Are you going from a male to a female, female to a male? And do I really know I'm gender fluid or whatever that looks like, right? How does that play into it though?
So this is
You can't begin again, as you said. You
Right.
can't begin again.
Right. So this is whenever you start talking about an issue of who you are, your identity, okay? That's going to be something that a lot of people struggle with. Who am I? Who did God create me to be? Who am I supposed to be? What's my purpose? Those are things that are definitely struggles for anybody, okay? Therefore, you have to begin to ask yourself, what's the view that I'm going to come from? And am I going to come from a world view? Am I going to come from a biblical view? Or am I going to come from a cultural view to determine who I am? And that plays a big role from a mental health perspective. Are you coming from a worldview that says you can choose to be who you want? Are you coming from a cultural view that says it depends on the culture and my surroundings? Or are you coming from a biblical view that says you are who God created you to be? You're wonderfully and you're creatively made as a male or as a female. So a lot of times from a mental health perspective, you have to begin to identify, where's this person coming from? Where's their view of self coming from? And unfortunately, when you're in those situations as a parent though, now comes the difficult part for parenting. Because you can now get to the point of, as a parent, like, I know what's right, but I know how my child feels. So now all of a sudden, some parents that are struggling with this saying, how do I get through this from a mental health perspective? How do I support but not support what I don't believe is actually right? And that's where, from a mental health perspective, I work with parents saying there's this thing called separating the person from the behavior. And that is very difficult because the individual that you're dealing with doesn't want you to separate the person from the behavior.
Yeah.
Because if you don't accept my behavior, then you're not accepting me as a person. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. As a parent, I love you as a person. There is nothing that you can do to stop me from loving you as a person. However, that behavior is unacceptable. That goes against my view. That goes against my belief. That goes against, from a biblical perspective, what I believe God created you or me to be. And there's the difficult part too, because now the parent has to make a decision. Do I decide to do what I believe and know is right from my biblical worldview? Or do I operate in a worldview? Or do I operate in a cultural view in dealing with the mental illness or mental health of my child? And that's a difficult situation to be in.
It truly is. And it's also difficult when you're putting on the camera and you're showing the highlight reel of your life and what it's supposed to be, but it's really not. How do you detect when you know someone is really struggling? Because on camera, oh, everything is perfect, but behind the scenes, not so much.
And to answer that, I'll be upfront. Again, keep it real.
Keep it real.
You can't detect it all the time. You can't. We've come so accustomed to putting on that mask and then becoming the mask that we put on. So externally, it appears that everything is great, and the person believes everything is great. It's not until we hit that valley experience that we begin to struggle from a mental health perspective. Okay? What does that look like? Well, if we're going to talk about anxiety being one of the number one diagnoses that we deal with in the mental health field, why is that? Because of what I call Trinitarian therapy. It looks at the three things. There's the unexpected, the unwanted, the unknown. Whatever that mask in the external, if you just got off the cruise or you just got off from Hawaii, everything is great, or you just got this six-figure raise, you're making $250 a year and everything is great, bought the new house, and then everybody's doing all that, but then when one of three things happens, the unexpected, the unwanted, and the unknown, it shakes all of that. All of that.
And then what do you do?
Exactly. That's the next episode.
Right. That's on the next episode.
That's the next episode.
Right.
And the episodes to come. Because that's another reason why I was led to just do the reboot of Matters of the Mind. Because it's not just one answer to a question.
And it's definitely not one size fits all.
It's not. And that's in the reboot part of Matters of the Mind. My goal now is to say, okay, let me bring in some of the interns I've worked with or the people who are in the field with me. And it's not just from Dr. Rick's perspective. It's from the perspective of Dr. Rick and others as well, to validate the fact that we're all going through something. But the reality is, how do we deal with it?
Yeah.
What's the view or what's the mindset that's going to maintain your ability to go through and maneuver through this thing called life?
It does not. Trust me. I've learned the hard way, I think. But what I also know that there are so many myths about mental health and who should get it and do we really need it or does it even work? So if there was one myth that you want to just erase permanently.
Yes.
What would that? What is it? Tell me.
It's a myth and a statement that people make all the time. I hear it. It is what it is. It is what it is. If you could take that out of your vocabulary from a mental health perspective and change it to "it is what I make it," you will be so much better. It is what it is. When you focus on and develop an "is what it is" mentality, you are now being able to make excuses for these issues of life that come at you. It is what it is. No. It is what you make it. So as a person thinks in his heart and his mind, so is he or she. It is what you make it. It's what you make it. It's not "it is what it is." Okay? That doesn't mean, though, that you don't, and I don't take into consideration when I'm working with individuals, that we don't separate the difference between situations and circumstances. Circumstances are those things that happen that are beyond your control. If it's raining outside, you can't control that, okay? If there's a storm or whatever. So when I say it is what it is, no, it's not. It's what you make it. You can't control when it rains, how it rains. You can control how you deal with the rain, which now means it's a situation. For example, circumstance, it's raining outside. Situation, you forgot your umbrella. That's a situation that you put yourself in.
Yeah.
So now you're gonna get wet for real. Okay? So we have to be able to distinguish between those things that are circumstances that are outside of your control, but then there are situations that you caused or allowed to happen because you did nothing.
This is powerful. That's why I love this doctor, right? Dr. Rick Adams. You have just given us the lay of the land. But in the next episode, you're going to share actual tools that we can use, right? And from different perspectives, quite even, right?
Yes.
So that's an exciting part of what's coming up in the next, and even laugh a little along the way, right?
We will. I'll make you laugh.
That's half the medicine.
It is.
Don't want to miss the next episode of Matters of the Mind with Dr. Rick Adams.
Can't wait.
You've been listening to Matters of the Mind, a podcast that focuses on matters that affect the mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. Come, join me on the couch as we discuss matters dealt with, matters dealing with, and the matters that we avoid.